Welcome to the Outlier Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Conlon, and today I'm going to be discussing a case that actually shares the same lead investigator as the Karen Reed, John O'Keefe case, and that is Michael Proctor. But this is the disappearance and presumed murder of Ana Walshe. Now, this case has taken a lot of twists and turns with new evidence coming to light that really paints a disturbing picture of what may have happened to Ana. So let's break it all down piece by piece. Ana Walshe, she was a 39-year-old mother of three, and she was last seen alive on January 1st, 2023, at her Cohasset, Massachusetts home. She was reported missing a few days later on January 4th. Her husband, Brian Walshe, has since been accused of her murder, and this case has garnered international attention due to the gruesome allegations and Ana's connections to both D.C. and her home country of Serbia. But let's back up a little bit. Who was Ana Walshe? Ana was born in Belgrade, Serbia in 1983, and she later moved to the U.S. in 2005, becoming a dual citizen. She worked her way up in the hospitality industry and then eventually landed a high-powered job as a regional general manager at Tishman Speyer, which is a real estate firm. And this role had her splitting her time between her family home in Cohasset and a residence in Washington, D.C. And Cohasset, just a little bit about that. It's a super small town, but nice, in Massachusetts, about 20 miles outside of Boston. It has lots of shops and restaurants, and reportedly everybody knows everybody's business there. So, Ana married Brian Walshe in 2016, and they had three young sons together, aged 2, 4, and 6 at the time of her disappearance. By all outward appearances, they seemed like a happy family. But as we'll see, things weren't quite what they seem behind closed doors. So let's talk about this timeline leading up to Ana's disappearance. Ana was last seen in the early morning hours of New Year's Day, 2023. Her husband, Brian Walshe, claimed that she had left early that morning for Washington, D.C. However, she never made it there. By January 4th, she was officially reported missing. Almost immediately, Brian's story started to raise some red flags, and we all know that police and investigators immediately dial in on the husband or significant other, and that's exactly what they did with Brian Walshe. So prosecutors say that in the days following Ana's disappearance, Brian made several suspicious moves. First, there was a trip to a local hardware store where he spent $450 in cash on cleaning supplies. Then there were the Google searches. Will people ever learn, honestly? Brian allegedly searched for things like, quote, how long before a body starts to smell, and, quote, 10 ways to dispose of a dead body if you really need to. Yeah, guys, I'm not kidding. He really Googled this. He also reportedly looked up whether you could throw away body parts. Oh, not exactly the kind of search history I'd ever want to explain, but that's just me. So it wasn't long before investigators completely focused all of their attention on Brian. And when police searched the Walshe family home, they found blood in the basement and a bloody knife. A more extensive search at a Peabody transfer station yielded even more damning evidence. 10 bags of items were found, including a hacksaw, a hatchet, cleaning supplies, Ana's COVID-19 vaccination card, and many of these items had traces of blood that were later connected to both Brian and Ana through DNA. So Brian was officially arrested on January 18th, 2023, and indicted by a grand jury in March on charges including murder, misleading a police investigation, and improper conveyance of a human body. Now, I am going to read to you part of the affidavit from the charge of misleading the police. There's a lot in there that I think will be very helpful to hear. Page 2 of 8, written by Detective Harrison Schmidt of the Cohasset Police Department. Quote, On January 4th, 2023, at approximately 1835, I arrived at blank blank to investigate a missing person, Ana Walshe. Investigators interviewed Brian Walshe multiple times in relation to the disappearance of his wife. Walshe was specifically asked to provide a timeline for the days of January 1st, 2023, and January 2nd, 2023, and did so on multiple occasions. Walshe relayed that he had New Year's Eve dinner with a friend, Jem, which he and Ana hosted at their home. Jem arrived around 8:30 and left around 1 or 1:30. Walshe relayed that he and Ana went to bed shortly after Jem left. Walshe further relayed that Ana told him she had a work emergency and needed to fly back to D.C. in the morning. Walshe relayed Ana got ready and kissed him goodbye and told him to go back to sleep. Ana will then usually take an Uber, Lyft, or taxi to the airport. Ana left between 6 and 7 a.m. Walshe and Ana have 3 children. Walshe relayed he got up around 7 a.m. and made breakfast for the boys. In the afternoon, a babysitter arrived at the house, and Walshe left to run errands at about 3 p.m. Walshe went to Shaw's to get OJ and milk and then came home. He then left again at about 4 p.m. to go see his mother, who lives at blank blank. At the time, Walshe did not have a cell phone, so he did not use GPS. Walshe relayed that he drove to his mother's house via the route leading by Derby Street in Hingham, Route 3 north, Route 93 through Boston, and instead of taking Route 1A, he got lost and took Route 1 and then maybe Route 114. Walshe relayed the commute should have taken 60 to 70 minutes, but ended up taking 90 minutes. Within about 15 minutes of arriving at his mother's condo, he left to run errands for his mother at Whole Foods and CVS to get groceries and cleaning wipes. Walshe then went back to his mother's condo and then arrived home at Cohasset at about 8 p.m. Walshe relayed one of the boys must have taken and lost his phone during New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. Walshe relayed on Monday, January 2nd, 2023, his cell phone was found under a pillow. I have a lot to say about this, but more on that later. On Monday, January 2nd, Walshe relayed that he took one of his boys for ice cream while the babysitter watched the other 2. He took him to get a chocolate shake at Press in Norwell. On Friday, January 6th, 2023, a massive search that included K-9 officers, Metro LEC Search and Rescue, State Police CERT team members, State Police investigators, Cohasset Police, and other local police partners were underway searching for the missing person, Ana Walshe. The search returned on the morning of January 7th, 2023, and that afternoon, at least 6 investigators were tasked with driving to the North Shore area of Massachusetts to verify Walsh's route of travel and verify his visits to all establishments like Whole Foods and CVS. These investigators were reassigned from other tasks and efforts to locate Ana. Multiple investigators spent multiple hours in the afternoon and evening of January 7th, 2023, traveling and reviewing video. Brian Walshe was not observed on video from Whole Foods or CVS in the time frame that he stated that he was there. Now, this next part of the affidavit might come as a shock to you if you're not familiar with this case, but I assure you I will get to unpacking this later. But Brian Walshe does have a felony conviction under his belt at this point in 2023. I will continue. Brian Walshe has been convicted in federal court of felony fraud by wire and is currently on pre-sentencing probation. The probation conditions include monitoring and home confinement. Walshe must request leave from his home each week and specify the time and need for such leave. On the week beginning Sunday, January 1st, 2023, Walshe was granted leave for dropping his children off at school each day from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. and picking up his kids from 3:15 to 6:45. Among other approved leave times was 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. for shopping on Wednesday, January 4th, 2023. On Sunday, January 1st, 2023, Walshe had requested travel between 3 to 9 to drop off his mother. Walshe told investigators that his mother had had a recent cataract surgery and she was staying with him at his residence so he could assist her. Walshe said he had this time scheduled so he could bring his mother home after her recovery. During the interviews with Walshe, he stated that his mother had recovered from the surgery quicker than expected and had driven herself home. However, he still used the time he had approved to go visit her and run errands for her. The errands were the trips to Whole Foods and CVS that investigators later showed did not occur through the hours of viewing video evidence. It's also important to note that this is the day one of Ana being missing. Walsh's statements to investigators about his whereabouts on Monday, January 2nd, 2023, were consistent in that he took his oldest child for ice cream or a smoothie at Press Bar in Norwell. This was during the morning hours that he is allotted for school drop-off between 8 and 10:30 a.m., but there was no school on Monday, January 2nd, due to the holiday. Investigators later showed video evidence of Walshe at the Home Depot in Rockland wearing a black surgical mask, blue surgical gloves, and making a cash purchase. This trip was made in violation of his probation conditions and during the time that he is allotted to pick up his kids from school. The data from Walsh's cell phone extraction, given on consent, also showed that the device traveled to the areas of Brockton and Abington during the week of January 1st, 2023. The itinerary for Walsh's leave from home does not include such towns for approved travel. This is not a complete list of Walsh's approved leave from home and possible probation violations. The intentional, willful, and direct responses to questions about his whereabouts on the days of Sunday, January 1st, and Monday, January 2nd, were a clear attempt to mislead and delay investigators. Investigators explained to Walshe that he would naturally be suspected of harming his wife due to her disappearance, and they would need to account for his whereabouts. The fact that he was asked a specific question and he gave an untruthful answer that led investigators out of the area caused a clear delay in the search for the missing person, Ana Walshe. Walshe intentionally gave untruthful statements, knowing investigators would need to travel and corroborate such statements. In any criminal investigation or investigation into a missing person, physical evidence and video evidence has the risk of being lost. I know from training and experience that physical evidence, specifically evidence that is outside, may deteriorate over time. I also know that video evidence varies in retention time. Video files may be overwritten as frequently as every 24 hours, and every second is valuable when searching for such evidence before it's lost. Based on the facts set forth herein and based on my training, education, experience, and participation in this investigation, I submit that there is probable cause to believe that Brian R. Walshe has violated GLC 268-13B1, witness, juror, police, court official, intimidate. Wherefore, by this affidavit and application, I respectfully request that the court issue a criminal complaint for Brian R. Walshe, date of birth, January 31st, 1975, end quote. So what I immediately gather from this, besides the fact that Brian Walshe is allegedly beyond evil, beyond comprehension evil, is that he's also a hot mess and a really dumb, stupid criminal. And what would be his motive in all this, or possible motive? Well, according to prosecutors, Brian believed that Ana was having an affair, and it has been confirmed that she was. There's evidence suggesting that Brian became increasingly paranoid about his wife's frequent trips to D.C. for work, and in his Google searches, he even looked up the best state to file for divorce as a man. That potential affair could really be what sparked this horrifying chain of events. But my gosh, can you blame Ana? It is not illegal to have an affair, and also, as I mentioned, and I will get into this, Brian Walshe was a criminal. Reportedly, Ana had told a friend that she planned to leave Brian Walshe. He was going to prison. He was a deadbeat. And she allegedly did have a lover that she possibly spent part of the Thanksgiving holiday with in Dublin, Ireland. So back to Brian's legal trouble, and he does seem like a loser. I would probably leave him too. So he was involved in a separate case, an art fraud scheme. Back in 2016, Brian was caught selling fake Andy Warhol paintings on eBay. He pled guilty in 2021 to wire fraud and other charges and was sentenced in February 2023 to 37 months in prison for the art fraud case. He was also ordered to pay almost $500,000 in restitution. So, despite Brian's history of deception and crime, this case remains incredibly complex. I mean, they don't have Anna's body. And Brian's legal team, which is now led by public defender Larry Tipton, has had mountains of discovery to sift through. And this case is expected to hinge heavily on DNA evidence. Tipton himself has admitted that this will be a DNA complex, DNA heavy case. And that includes blood found in multiple locations and just other really chilling, grim findings. And interestingly, Brian's original attorney, Tracy Minor, withdrew from the case in late 2023 after Brian was declared indigent, meaning he could no longer afford her services. So since then, the case has slowed down somewhat as Tipton catches up with all of the evidence. So it's kind of comical. In late 2023, Brian was appealing his federal sentence in the art fraud case, all while sitting behind bars without bail for Anna's disappearance at the Norfolk County Correctional Center. So he's just juggling multiple legal battles while behind bars. Now, as I mentioned, Anna's body has yet to be recovered, so I just hope and pray that police can swiftly locate and recover her body so it will be easier to put Brian Walshe behind bars for good, because everything here is pointing to his guilt, okay? Literally everything. And I want to add, there's also the matter of Brian's family. Yes, even his family doesn't like him. In November, his relatives actually did him a service and dropped a probate case that accused him of stealing $500,000 from his late father's estate. They decided not to pursue the case further because they likely thought they wouldn't be able to recover the money, and I'm sure they were spending a boatload in legal fees. So, where does Brian's murder case stand now? Well, a hearing is scheduled for October 2nd, but this is going to take months to get to trial as new evidence trickles in, and I think that both sides are really preparing for a long, drawn-out battle just to get to trial. So, Anna's disappearance and just the gruesome allegations against Brian have shocked many in this really close-knit, small community. I mean, anytime you see that a hacksaw was purchased, and Brian did allegedly purchase a hacksaw at Home Depot, you know that that is for mutilating a body. He most likely mutilated his wife's body to dispose of it, and that is just sickening. It's heartbreaking. So yes, Brian will remain behind bars as he awaits trial for the murder of his wife. And there's just one more thing that adds another layer of complexity to this case. Remember at the beginning of the episode when I mentioned Michael Proctor from the Karen Reed John O'Keefe case? Well, Michael Proctor was also a lead investigator in this case as a state trooper from the Massachusetts State Police. And prosecutors just announced that they won't be calling him to testify in this trial. Now, how is that going to look? We will see. The defense could always call him, and they could always make him reread those disgusting text messages that he read on the stand during Karen Reed's murder trial. And that really will just show that he's a biased investigator. He is a biased policeman, and what he did to Karen Reed could potentially be done to other people. And officially, Brian Walshe is still innocent until proven guilty, but come on, everything points to Brian Walshe being guilty in this case. So it's going to be extremely upsetting if Proctor throws a wrench in this trial. And for whatever reason, he makes Brian Walshe look good. I mean, that's going to be so infuriating. I'm actually angry even discussing it and putting it out there into the universe. And just to clarify, they're not actually calling these officers lead investigators anymore. They're calling them designated case officers. So just to reiterate, Proctor was the designated case officer in the missing person search turned murder investigation. And this is or was the same role that he played in Reed's case. So I will continue to update everybody accordingly. I'll hop back on after Brian's hearing. I believe that I mentioned it was October 2nd. So if anything substantial comes of that, I'll do another episode, or I'll just do a blanket update somewhere on my Twitter or maybe a short form video on YouTube. Let's see. But anyway, thank you guys so much for listening. If you like this podcast, don't forget to rate or subscribe on Apple or wherever you listen, and check me out on YouTube at Pop Crime TV or my Wednesday night show at Primetime Crime Show. Okay, I'm Lauren Conlin. Thanks for listening.